Hello, I'm Aaron Porras, and thank you for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, a soldier goes missing in the Golan, the United Nations expands its peacekeeping forces in Lebanon, and Team Coco finishes up with their visit in the Holy Land. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. There is tragic and breaking news in the Golan Heights right now. An emergency investigation has been underway after an IDF soldier went missing last night. But now, unfortunately, his body has just been found dead. A major search was being performed in the Gutteres region of the regional heights. The regional heights. Damn it. Just from the voice in. From the voice in is fine. Me voice in, Zabasel. Okay. A major search was being performed in the Gutteres region of the Golan Heights, believed to be the last place the soldier was seen alive. Apparently, he'd left his unit during an unspecified military activity last night and hadn't been seen for nearly 24 hours. The investigation has taken a tragic turn for the worst, and although details remain unclear about what led to his death, the soldier's family has been notified already. The Army has launched an open investigation into the matter, but for now, this is the latest. The United Nations has over 10,000 troops in South Lebanon right now, tasked with maintaining peace in the region following the rise of Hezbollah. Now, after months of debate on whether or not to expand that mission, there's been a critical vote, and it looks like they'll be extending efforts to keep illegal weapons out of Hezbollah's hands. This is a major win for Israel, who have been fiercely critical of UNIFIL and the Security Council for being too soft on Hezbollah over the years. But now the thousands of UN troops will be granted widened powers. They're now allowed to physically enter villages where Hezbollah cells operate and take all necessary options at their own discretion. The mandate passed with a unanimous show of hands to the relief of Israeli and American ambassadors.
We have to be honest. For too long, UNIFIL's leadership has failed to make sure this goal is realized. In particular, UNIFIL Commander General Barry's lack of understanding of the threat Hezbollah poses to the region is baffling. At the direction of its patron, Iran, the terrorist organization Hezbollah is stockpiling an offensive arsenal in southern Lebanon. They have thousands of missiles and thousands of trained fighters, all beyond the control of the Lebanese government. It is apparent to everyone who cares to see it.
The United Nations Security Council has given the new resolution the official okay, which means the decision is to take effect immediately. This comes on the heels of UN Secretary-General Antonio Gutteres' three-day visit to Israel and the Palestinian territories, where he met with leaders on both sides of the conflict, hoping to find a path to peace between them. Though clearly Gutteres has heard Prime Minister Netanyahu's plans to expand UN presence in Lebanon, Gutteres has just called on both Israel and Egypt to open the blockade against Gaza. The UN chief just spoke in Gaza, asking the Palestinian world to come together and pursue a peaceful two-state solution.
For many years of contact with this conflict, I've had a dream to see the Holy Land with two states, Israel and Palestine, living in peace and security together.
Now, parades for martyrs and chants of destroying Israel for the glory of Palestine are something Israelis are very used to hearing, unfortunately, especially when the news is covering some sort of summer camp or school being run in the West Bank or Gaza. But when you hear about a terror training summer camp held in northern Israel and sponsored by an Israeli political party, many more heads are bound to turn. Well, here to talk about the Balad Party's new summer youth camp is founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman. Thank you very much for coming in, Doctor.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so first off, we're going to get right into it. The Balad Party members and spokespeople are insisting that they are protected by free speech in this endeavor at this camp, but it sounds like fairly clear incitement. What will or should Israel's response be to this?
Well, I certainly must agree with you. This is certainly beyond the bounds of free speech and is clearly incitement. Can you imagine what would happen if some right-wing organization were to conduct themselves in the same way? There'd be a huge outcry. And I have no doubt that this is well within the realm of incitement, and the Israeli government should take firm action to respond to it.
Will we see any arrests in the Balad Party, do you think?
Well, I think the fact that this has been allowed to go on for so long over the years reflects a complete collapse of political resolve on the part of the Israeli authorities. I certainly hope that there will be arrests, because basically it's incitement to violence. And as I said, I think anyone on the right wing conducting themselves in a far more or far less extreme manner would have found himself in trouble with the law.
Now, something that I found interesting is that the Balad Party has also claimed that the activities and ideologies taught at this camp are in line with their party narrative and movement, but their party movement, as expressed by them, stands to destroy the Jewish identity of Israel while lifting and supporting the Palestinian national identity instead. So, at what point can somebody legitimately argue that this is even borderline treason?
Well, I think they're across the border by quite a fair margin. And I think it's unacceptable that the Israeli authorities allow this to continue, because it really goes down to the essence of what the nation is in Israel. And you cannot have, on the one hand, a portion of the nation which is trying to promote a Jewish nation state, and another portion of the so-called nation, or so-called portion of the same nation, trying to destroy the Jewish nation state. It just can't carry on. If this is allowed to develop and isn't put a stop to, I think we could easily see a Lebanese scenario in Israeli society.
I mean, that being said, if I played the devil's advocate, I could say, it is a summer camp, and yes, they do military drills, but there are Jews who do military drills in the army.
But not to destroy the Jewish state. I mean, the founding principle of Israel is that it is a Jewish state. Now, if you're going to have organizations that challenge that, then they're challenging the very founding principles of the state. And I think that qualifies as sedition and treason. And I think that the full force of the law should be brought to bear against them.
Now, okay, so again, I'm going to play some devil's advocate. Is if you have one of their arguments is, again, I mentioned to take away the Jewish identity of Israel, but that's not something that only Arab parties are arguing. So is that so beyond the pale?
Well, if you think that Israel should be the nation state of the Jewish people, and that was the whole rationale for founding it, and if you read the Declaration of Independence, yes, that's unacceptable. I think it's unacceptable, and if the Jews want to maintain their nation state and their national independence, they'll have to deal with that quite robustly.
All right, now, how many Israeli Arabs do you actually think buy into this ideology? Because when you look at Balad's popularity, out of 120 Knesset seats, they only have 3.
Well, that's a bit misleading, because they're part of the joint list, which is 13 members, I think the third largest list in the Knesset. And all the components of the joint list are vehemently anti-Zionist and do not accept the Jewish nature of the state. So I think that if you're lenient with one of the more extreme elements, the others will follow suit. And I think this is a dangerous precedent, and I think tolerance and lenience here will produce a very unfortunate result in the not-too-distant future.
All right, so I have just a few moments left. So real quick, I wanted to ask you, this is the 18th year that this camp has been running.
I rest my case.
So do you think that there have been any attacks performed by Israeli Arabs, like what happened at the Temple Mount, that might be connected to camps like this?
Well, I don't know for sure, but I certainly wouldn't be astounded to find out that there were.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Dr. Sherman, thank you so much for coming in
today.
Thank you. Okay, now, following Prime Minister Netanyahu's promise to eject Al Jazeera from Israel once and for all, the government press office moved ahead and revoked the press card of one of Al Jazeera's senior reporters. But now, the state appears to have made a major change in its decision. With us now is ILTV's Brett Allen Smith. Brett, what's the latest with this?
Thank you, Aaron. Well, 2 weeks ago, the GPO announced that it was revoking the press credentials of Elias Karam, one of Al Jazeera's senior reporters based here in Jerusalem. Now, at the time, he was accused of violating the standards of journalistic ethics by using his media work to promote the, quote, Palestinian resistance, and possibly even inciting violence against the state of Israel. But now the state has just made a major reversal on the decision, and they've backed off from revoking his press credentials after all.
I see. So are they saying, why they've reversed their decision?
Well, when the office announced that they were revoking his credentials in the first place, this ignited massive uproar all over the world. I mean, Israel has long prided itself as one of the few, if only, champions for free speech in the Middle East, and that's something that came up at Karam's hearing with the GPO earlier this month. But the key legal issue here is whether or not he actually incited violence with his work. Now, that's something that he denied again and again at the trial, and most likely something that the state couldn't quite prove at this time, as you'll see right now in the report.
Okay.
At the height of the Temple Mount conflict last month, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced a bold promise to shutter Al Jazeera in Israel once and for all. Amid some of the bloodiest clashes between Israel and the Palestinians in years, members of the Israeli government claimed that the Arab media network had been purposely inciting violence at the holy site, the last straw on the camel's back. And 2 weeks ago, these threats became immediately very real when the government press office decided to revoke the press card of Elias Karam, one of Al Jazeera's Jerusalem-based senior correspondents. Rights groups all over the world denounced the move, slamming Israel's claim as one of the only beacons of free speech in the Middle East. But now, after an investigation and trial into Karam's history as a journalist, the director of the GPO has made a stunning reversal and decided not to revoke the press credentials after all. Press freedom is one of the cornerstones on which the GPO operates, he said in a statement. In the coming months, the GPO will closely monitor the network's Arabic and English reports about Israel. We will not hesitate, after consultation with legal and security sources, to take the necessary steps, end quote. The Al Jazeera journalists will be placed under scrutiny for the next 6 months, but for now, it looks like Israel is taking a big step back.
Now, one of the biggest evacuations in post-war Germany is now taking place following the discovery of a massive bomb from World War II in Frankfurt. Construction workers were carrying out some ordinary building work near Goethe University in the German city when they found it, a 1,400-ton British bomb hidden at the site. Luckily, the bomb did not and has not exploded, which is clearly why it was able to remain there for so long without having been discovered. Back during the Second World War, massive bombs just like this one were actually nicknamed blockbusters by the German media, because of their ability to wipe out entire streets or buildings. And 70,000 people are now being evacuated from homes near the site of the latest blockbuster discovery, but officers are guarding the area and saying there is currently no danger. It's been 70 years since the end of the war, but unexploded ordnances are regularly found buried under German land, dangerous reminders of Allied forces' intense bombing campaigns against Nazi Germany. The last big evacuation to take place after the discovery of an old bomb was in the southern city of Augsburg, where 54,000 people were forced out of their homes last Christmas. The citizens of Gaza live under strict militant Hamas rule, and for 30 years, something as simple as seeing a movie in a theater has been illegal. Well, it looks like a few hundred Gazans have just had a once-in-a-lifetime experience, since for one night only, they were allowed to watch a movie in a real cinema theater. There have been scattered reports of private, under-the-radar film screenings in Gaza, but it's been 3 decades since there's been a real projection in the Strip. Considered ungodly by many Islamic extremists, film screenings were banned by Hamas following the First Intifada, and under the threat of death, cinemas have been too afraid to conduct any proper screenings ever since. But for one night only, Hamas has allowed Samal Cinema, the oldest theater in the Gaza Strip, to raise the red curtain once again. Though the event's organizers claim the screening was in no way political, nearly 300 men and women from Gaza crammed into the theater and watched 10 Years, a locally shot film about Palestinians serving in Israeli prisons. Ordinary Gazans were just happy for a temporary escape into the fantasy of cinema, though. Quote, "We need to live like humans, with cinemas, public spaces, and parks," said one audience member. This rare screening comes after another shift in Hamas's film policy, when Gaza hosted a human rights film festival back in May. Hamas's political agendas aside, hopefully the citizens of Gaza will get more chances to see the outside world through the power of cinema in the future. Just over a month ago, 3 armed Israeli Arabs shot at and killed 2 police officers on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The immediate response to the violence was inspiring and heroic on many fronts. But the story doesn't end there. While performing emergency services at the scene, Magen David Adom paramedic Aaron Adler was shot. Here's some of Magen David Adom's own footage recounting those events.
ביום שישי, בסביבות השעה 7 בבוקר, 7 וכמה דקות.
I was at home with my 2 young daughters.
אמירס פורץ.
Terror incident in the old city.
רצתי לאופנה.
There's a line I tell my daughter every time I go out to a call because she always worries. Alma, Abba goes, but Abba always comes back.
אתה תמיד יודע שאתה יוצא לאירוע שהוא אירוע קשה, אתה פשוט לא מבין עד כמה הוא קשה.
I could have not come back this time.
Joining me now in the studio with more on this tragic story is Magen David Adom paramedic Aaron Adler. Thank you very much for coming in, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so my first question is, how's your recovery?
Speedy. It's good.
Speedy? It's
yeah,
good?
I'm almost fully recovered already.
How long have you been a paramedic for Magen David Adom?
I've been a paramedic for almost 12 years. I've been, 12 years. I was a volunteer before.
Do you often respond to terror attacks, or is it really just the whole gamut?
Until recently, I lived in Jerusalem, in Ramat Eshkol, which is not far from the old city, the Damascus Gate, Highway 1, where pretty much almost all of the attacks went down. And I lived there, and I worked at a law firm. I'm a lawyer when I'm not a paramedic. I worked at well, I was until recently. I just left my firm, and I'm starting med school in a month.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The law firm I worked at was in the center of town, so basically I was always somewhere around where everything happens, and of course I responded to regular calls as well, car accidents, chest pain, people who were sick at home, but I was always near the terrorist attacks, so I've responded to a couple dozen over the past few years.
Gosh. Walk me through what happened on that day.
Okay, so it was Friday morning. I was at home with my family. It's the initial report came in pretty much like every other attack. The initial report, terror incident by the old city. Details are unclear. Got up, left my home, got on my, I have a Magen David Adom motorcycle. It's a motorcycle equipped with advanced life support equipment, which I was given by Magen David Adom.
You can get like into narrow spaces.
I can get into narrow spaces, go very fast, speed through traffic. It's very, very effective piece of equipment. And I got on, I started driving towards the old city. As I started getting closer, reports started coming in that it's not exactly by the Lion's Gate, it's further in by the Temple Mount. It's not a stabbing, it's a shooting. The event is still ongoing.
Oh, wow.
Which is, it changes things. It doesn't really change, it doesn't change what I could do about it, but obviously with details like that, you expect a bigger, more casualties, widespread area. You just have to, calculate the factors and see how you're going to deal with it. What we didn't know is that it was actually still happening when we got there. Usually,
so, I mean, when they say ongoing, they really meant it.
They really meant ongoing.
Yeah.
It's usually, they're not sure. There's reports maybe there's another terrorist, maybe someone got away. But this was actually happening.
This is still happening.
This is still happening.
So, and then you approached the.
So I arrived on scene. Yeah, I arrived on scene along with 2 other motorcycle medics that were following behind. Got off, start treating. We stopped mamash, like exactly at the entrance to Har HaBayit, to the Temple Mount, and that's where the first victim was.
You can't proceed like on you have to proceed on foot from there, or does
yeah,
it
there's
matter?
physically there's no way to get in on vehicle from that point. So stopped there, gave initial treatment to one of the victims. At that point, he was still suffering from critical injuries. Reported back that it's still going on and that it's actually inside the Temple Mount. And I understood that there are more terror victims inside the complex, and I left that patient with another paramedic and a few medics and ran in. I ran in along with other police officers. Now, it's always very tense in a scenario like that. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know if there's going to be anyone else, but this time was a little different. Like, you could smell the gunpowder in the air. There were police officers with their weapons up, literally looking for literally looking for someone else. Continued up from there, and while treating the second victim, one of the terrorists started shooting again. A whole gun battle broke out, and during that shooting, I was in the middle of doing a procedure that I felt I can't stop. I completed quickly and got up to try taking me and him to get cover, and then I got hit by shrapnel from ricochet from the shooting.
Oh gosh. Well, Aaron, I really hate to cut it off, but unfortunately that's all the time we have. But this just goes to prove this is an intense position. It's a very important position. It's something that I think that meme that's going around right now. Not all heroes wear capes. This is definitely it. And thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, it is the world's favorite ginger talk show host. He's wrapping up his tour of the Holy Land. Conan OBrien has been filming his latest Conan Beyond Borders TV special right here in Israel all week. And not only has he had a blast, but it looks like he even scored a quickie bar mitzvah.
Tel Baruch Central Synagogue. I'm going to head inside and find out what's involved in becoming more Jewish. I could become Jewish in a limited amount of time. What? I could become Jewish in an hour? You'll become Shrotat. I got that one. Didn't I nail it?
And there's the funny man styling the kippah, dancing with 13-year-olds as he celebrates finally becoming a man. He even challenged the local rabbi to a round of foosball and got his poster signed by all the new BFFs. But entering into manhood has just been one of the many highlights for Team Coco. A few days ago, he met personally with Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem and then took his very first float in the Dead Sea and crashed the second season of filming of Israel's hit TV show Fauda. Now I wonder who he'll be playing. Then later, while down in southern Israel, he even picked himself up a little souvenir.
I'm standing in the Negev desert, and this may have been a rash decision, but I just bought an acre of land right here. I was thinking bed and breakfast. I probably should have talked to my wife first.
But perhaps coolest of all, Conan suited up in uniform and had his butt kicked into shape by the women of the IDF's Karakal infantry unit, who ran him through drills in the hot Israeli sun. So anyway, this is the end of a very memorable visit, and all week Israelis have been having a blast with Team Coco. All right, and now with the latest top 5 is ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh. Take it away, Emmanuel.
Looking for an outdoor adventure on your trip to Israel? Well, Israel has it all. Breathtaking nature, rich ancient history, and rare wildlife. So here are the top 5 nature reserves in Israel. Makhtesh Ramon, or the Ramon crater located in the Negev desert, is the largest natural crater in the world. The waters of an ocean that covered the area over 200 years ago began to recede, eventually forming the 40-kilometer crater. Go for the diverse wildlife, but you'll stay for the view. Gamlan Nature Reserve is set high in the Golan Heights and is a magical place to hike, see archaeological ruins, eagles' nests, and breathtaking views. It's home to over 80 10 feet in length vultures who soar above you and cast a shadow. Oh, and just a 45-minute trail leads you to the 170-foot Gamla waterfall. So whether you have a hectic itinerary or can spare the entire day, either way, it's definitely worth a stop. Located on the eastern edge of the Judean desert and overlooking the Dead Sea is the Masada National Park, an ancient fortification with an endless amount of history and, well, after the hike is absolutely stunning view, Masada symbolizes the ancient kingdom of Israel and its violent destruction and exile at the end of the 1st century. The outstanding universal value of Masada led to its inscription in 2001 as UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, what are you waiting for? A 3,000-acre breeding and re-acclimation center, also known as the High Barn Nature Reserve, is 4th on our list. Locally extinct and endangered animals mentioned in the Bible are bred here for potential reintroduction into the Negev desert. Some rare desert animals not native to Israel are also found here, such as the red-necked ostrich from northern Africa. Definitely a must-see. Located in Haifa are the Baha'i Gardens, which are around the shrine of the Bab on Mount Carmel. The gardens cover around 200,000 square meters of land, and downhill are the Monument Gardens, which holds the grave of some of the members of the Baha'i Holy Family. A stunning scenic drive leads to an absolute breathtaking view. Stay tuned for our next top 5. Back to you.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine. Now for our Hebrew word of the day. We just broke the news that Frankfurt is currently being evacuated after the discovery of a massive bomb dating back to World War II. And so today's word is ptsatsa, which is how you say bomb in Israel. So this is a word I personally hear a lot. No, not because I work with ptsatzot or bombs in my job. Wrong. Actually, what I hear is eze ptsatsa, because I'm like totally the bomb. That's right, the spirit of the 90s is alive here in Israel, where ptsatsa doesn't just mean a deadly explosive. If they're digging the ice cream, they'll say, yo, eze ptsatsa, or hey, this ice cream is awesome. Just remember that the more you use ptsatsa, the more we can bring it back and relive our glory days of the 90s. Now that would be a ptsatsa. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy with a low of 76 or 24 degrees Celsius. The weekend is also expected to be partly cloudy and with a rise in temperatures to a high of around 88 or 31 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.59 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras, and thank you very much for watching.